that you abolished the diaper tax.
The thing is, if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. Every single one is different.
When you're the dean of the School of Communications at Quinnipiac University
because it's allowed me to understand education.
Started traveling the country, just training people to understand these disabilities.
That was one of the reasons why I brought you on to discuss that.
Monday night, 8 p.m. EST.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Pamela Roth Live. It's nice to see everybody. It is Monday, November 6th, 2023, and it is getting quite chilly out there. It feels like yesterday was summer, and summer came very late. And then we had a very nice, relaxing Halloween, and now there's frost. So welcome to winter. It's creeping up on us. So tonight's guest is an incredible gentleman. He goes by the name of Ace. It's actually Asaf Mengelgreen, and we know him as Ace. And Ace is joining us tonight to discuss something that I find very important, and I've been experiencing it myself, and I'm sure a lot of you have, and that's personal growth and development. All of us, or many of us in our lives, go through many changes, whether it's changes of career, we move from one location to another, we're in and out of relationships, in and out of, like I said, jobs, and a lot of times we have to develop ourselves and to better ourselves and to live a total life and enjoy it and experiencing these changes for ourselves. And first of all, if we're going to have personal growth, of course, it's called personal because it comes from within. And there's a lot of times that we have a lot of outside influences from either the environment, family, relationships that could possibly stop us or hinder us or talk us out of what it is that we want to do. So Ace is going to speak with us about finding our personal goals, helping us achieve them, and how you can get on this path to achieve what it is that you want as a person, and it can affect your career, your relationships, and yourself as a whole. So without any further ado, I want to bring on Ace. Please welcome Ace to the show.
Well, good evening, Pamela. Thank you for having me on your show tonight. Good evening, audience. I'm really excited to talk about this. And let me just jump right in. You had mentioned something in the introduction, and I'm taking notes here, how personal growth and development comes from within. And you are exactly right, because when I've tried to, say, enlighten people who aren't ready for it, my God, are those doors shut tight. And it's almost offensive if you try to instill this wisdom into those who aren't ready for it. And you mentioned how you're making a career change. There's obviously shifts happening in your life right now. This came from within, where you realized that it was time to make this shift. It's important that we do this in life. It's more important that we know how to do it properly. To do that, we must have a certain knowledge base, or let's call it a mindset, so we can manage ourselves correctly as we take action in our life, new action to lead us to new outcomes. This is something I myself went through about 7 years ago when I hit my proverbial bottom, and I had a very simple choice to make. I was either going to end my life or I was going to begin my life. And I decided to actually do both. I decided to kill the 1.0 version of myself and to begin Ace 2.0. But I didn't know how. And my process was a long one, and it was reading a lot and consuming a lot of content from gurus who have come before me, and reading books even as far back from Seneca, which are going back many, many years. And I realized that there is this eternal wisdom, this evergreen wisdom that's been around since the beginning of mankind. I was able to take all that in, and then in the process, I learned that I had a knack for communicating. So I joined the Toastmasters because I wanted to enlighten others of the things that I discovered. And that's how I became Ace the speaker. And I created a program called Living Totality, which is simply my take on this evergreen wisdom. It helped me figure out a blueprint to how I can become the better version of myself. Now, I dare not say best version, because best is a moving target, and we don't really know what that is. It's subjective, and I try to avoid those things, but I say just try to be 1% better every day. If you can do that in a year, in 3 years, the numbers add up due to compounding, that you become an entirely different person. So what is this?
Or a different version, right? Or a different version of yourself.
Correct. It is.
You know,
It can be a very different version of yourself, and that leads to starting with the outcome. And we might be jumping ahead here, because let's just flow what's organic here. When you wanted to make that shift, you had an idea already of this outcome that you were after. I like to start with the outcome and to reverse engineer backwards. It's like having a goal.
Actually, right.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Ace, like you mentioned that a couple of years ago that you bottomed out and you decided you had to make some changes. I had something very similar happen to me about close to 2 years ago. Had a life-changing situation that happened with my career as an attorney, where I was told I can't practice for the next 2 years. And so after being an attorney for over 25 years, and really I felt like my world just literally crashed around me. And I actually sat like mourning the loss and death of my practice. And I felt like, in Jewish religion, we're like, you sit shiva, and so I mourned the loss. I wrote a eulogy. I wrote a eulogy for my practice. Like I literally buried it and it's dead. And everybody was like, no, you're going to come back in 2 years. You'll see, you're not disbarred. It's only a suspension, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I just sat for a very long period of time crying and thinking, I don't know how to do anything else. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And it took me a while and a lot of reading and a lot of introspection. And I realized, something, I'm wrong. It's not the end of the world. And I actually had to discuss it with my son. So it's almost like I was talking to myself and he was my mirror. And I realized, something, if I pick up and I move to another state and I start all over again, I literally have to start all over again. So I'm going to take this period of time, this next 2-year period of my life, and imagine I just moved to another location. So I have to start over. I have to recreate myself. And it took a while to do. And I did, between taking different courses and really finding out about myself and about my likes and things that I used to be able to do. And I'm a people person, like you said, as far as, speaking. And I used to be a trial attorney. So I was very accustomed to being out and speaking to people and selecting jurors and just being able to talk. And I was like, something, I'm able to do that. No one took away my mouth. I can still talk to people. And I have a background in finance. So I decided I'm going to go back and do that. And what I realized is change is scary because you get so used to who you are and what you are and your environment, and change can be scary, but at the same time too, it's exciting and it's thrilling and you get this endorphin rush. And I'm not a tree. You plant a tree, the tree stays there and just grows roots down and spreads out. But you and I, people, we're not trees. We can pick up and we can move. We can change our lifestyle. We can change who we are. Listen, we're even changing sexes now, which I haven't done. But you can change, and that's a good thing. Some people don't have that mindset. Some people are very content or comfortable in who they are and what they do, and they don't want to make a change. And like you said, you can't go and tell somebody it's time to change because they are either not ready or they may never be ready or not even want to do it. But I welcome the change, and I realize over the course of my lifetime, with my various different degrees, I've always been changing and evolving and learning. And I take that, all these experiences, as something to be good.
You said something that caught my attention. The eulogy. Did you say you wrote a eulogy?
Yes.
So I talked about this in the past, and I challenged people to write their own eulogy because, well, you don't want to wait until you're dead to hear someone else say it. So why don't you write your own eulogy so you can take inventory of your life now? Who are you? Write your own eulogy. And people won't do that because it's scary. They don't want to put it on paper in black and white, in ones and zeros. Who am I? What am I? What have I achieved? What's important to me? How have I lived my life? Has this journey been worthwhile? The first step to growth is to take inventory of yourself honestly, which is accountability, and then assess, okay, what is working for me and what is not. The first thing I did in my process, which was the first, not when I got into personal growth and development, this was probably 3+ years into it, when I was finally ready to stop hating myself and I needed to start loving myself, because I never loved myself until I was 40 years old. What I did, and this is another thing that I challenge people to do, because you mentioned also in the mirror, I challenged myself to love the man in the mirror. And the way I did this, and I heard some speakers say this at some point, he would every day face himself in the mirror and scream at himself and take out all of the nasty things that we think about ourselves, because we are the most critical of ourselves.
Very hypercritical.
We need to bring it to light. And when you face yourself in the mirror, because I couldn't face myself in the mirror. When I looked at myself, I didn't like the man I saw in the mirror. I didn't like. I saw a loser, just a nobody, a failure, and those are the nice ones. And I would yell at myself, top of my lungs. It would only last about 15, 20 seconds because my throat started to hurt. And I did this every day, pretty much, for I think it was about 6 weeks, until a change happened. One day, about 6 weeks in, I faced the mirror. I'm looking at myself. And for the first time ever, I felt sympathy for the man in the mirror. No longer did I hate the man or dislike the man. I didn't love the man, but I felt sympathy for the man. And I said, you know what, Ace? Today, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm going to cut you some slack. And that was the beginning of me starting to love myself, and the beginning of ending to hate myself. We must look in the mirror and address who we are and ask ourselves, do I love the person in the mirror? And every now and then, when I speak with somebody who I notice is having some challenges in their life and they're not very happy, I ask them that question, do you love yourself? And you know what? They're like shocked. They go like deer in the headlights. They can't answer that question. And boom, I just realized this person, is not even ready, because they don't even love themselves. And that is the litmus test. Do you love yourself? Now, some people are happy-go-lucky. Yeah, I love me, and this, that's great. You have those kind of people. That's not who I am. I'm a Virgo. I'm very analytical. I'm very anal about things. I overthink what I think, and then I overthink it some more. So to me, it was a very difficult process to love myself, because I've been so hypercritical of myself for 40 years. And there's a slew of reasons as to why. But let's bring it back to this. If you are ready to start on a new path to better yourself, first of all, ask yourself, do I love the person in the mirror? Can you look at yourself in the mirror and pat yourself on the back and say, you know what, you did a great job today. I'm proud of you. If you can't, then let's really start breaking things down and just start at the basic level. When I talk about upgrading a mindset, it is like upgrading on our phones, right? We all have our smartphones, our iPhones, and our this and that. And pretty much everybody has the latest and the greatest. And how often are we downloading the next software update, the next software? We do it. But when is the last time you did the same software update to your mindset?
Right.
People don't really do that. We grow up being programmed by our parents, by schools, by institutions, peer pressure.
By the environment, by our environment, our friends. Sure.
And it happens when we are quite young. And pretty much the rest of our life, most people who don't go through the path of personal growth and development never really truly download a new software update. But you can't just download a software update. You have to first reformat and flush out the existing software, which is no longer serving your best interest. It's literally obsolete. But people won't want to do that because it's scary. You talked about scary. Change is scary.
It's comfortable too. And it's comfortable.
People are comfortable, and in Western society, in America, the standards are relatively high, and that's by design. Keep people comfortable enough so they don't seek change, so they don't rock the boat, is what it is. And that's that's all by design. But some people hit walls for different reasons, and they all of a sudden realize, whoa, this isn't working for me. What the hell is going on? What do I do about this? Those people are ready for change. And then, there's different ways they go about it. For me, it was, like you said, it was reading a lot of books. I took a year off of my life. I cut out not that I had a lot of social life back then, but whatever I did, I cut out. It was work, my boys, and reading. And that was it. And then it was Toastmasters, so I can start communicating better. But everything was just, how can I level up my knowledge in here? How can I learn from others before me who have figured this stuff out? Because I need to know, because you don't learn this at school, and parents don't teach this, and your friends don't teach this to you as well. And we can talk about friends in the circle that we keep and how tragic our circles are to us, because again, change is scary, and we're not willing to do the things necessary to clear the cache, the memory, so then we can make space to download new information, a new operating system or software, if you will, which then we can live our life by that programming, which will then give us a better experience of life, much like our phones. Once we download those software updates, all of a sudden function better, they look better, they're more fun, the functionality, everything is like, wow, this is like
faster, sure.
Yeah, it's the same thing here. But we'll rush to get the latest iPhone and download the latest software. But dare I approach somebody and try to give him some personal growth development advice? It's like, whoa, what are you doing, man? It's pretty sad. And when you're not ready, you're not ready. But when you are, seek out the right people, because that's then when you need to, find that mentor, find that inspiration, and get those tools so you can learn the path. And for me, it was living totality, and that was based off of three very basic, simple tenets: awareness, action, and accountability. Because everything in our life first happens with awareness. It first comes to light. Genesis 1:3, God said, "And let there be light." Everything begins when we become aware of something. And the very next thing, once you take in information, the next logical thing is action. What do I do with that information? Maybe I do nothing with it. That's inaction, but that's action. It's the decision to decide not to act. That was the action I took. And then the final step, but it's not really final, is the accountability. And it's to look back at the action. Did that work out for me? Did me not doing this yield a better outcome or a worse? Well, if it was better, then great. The next go around, I know what to do. But if it was worse, I know I need to make a change, because pretty soon awareness will happen again and the same experience will come to you. But you've learned from, if you were truly accountable, that, hey, the last time this happened, I did this, but I'm not going to do that anymore, because I'm not interested in getting stuck in those patterns, right, that we find ourselves in. When we find ourselves in patterns that don't work well for us, it's because we are failing ourselves in the accountability department of living totality, because it goes round and around. Yes. And I say with every revolution, you should strive for evolution. That is how we level up, point blank.
But also, too, you got to look at the people who are around you in your circle, because if they're not encouraging you, if they're discouraging you, then that's not going to allow you to so-called level up. So that's when you have to separate yourself and say, you know something, you're a good person, but right now you're not good for me. I need to do this for myself. And this is why what I call those kind of people in those situations to be static noise. You know, it's just, I just have to tune it out because I have goals. There are things that I need to do for myself. And if these people are not going to help me achieve that next level, then I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with them. But as of right now, I have to back off from these people because I need to get where I'm going.
Jim Rohn, who's no longer with us, one of the greatest speakers of all time, he was the one who famously said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. So let's work with that number of 5 people. Right. Let's say 5 people is that inner circle, right? Because that's a very tight circle. Who typically takes seats in those 5 spots? Mom, dad, brother, sister, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend, maybe a business partner. These are our primary people. Right. Now, let's take inventory of those 5 people. How many of those people are truly there to elevate us? Are they keeping us static, like it's kind of the noise, or are they actually bringing us down? And the shocking truth is, most, if not all of those people are not elevating us. Even our parents, and for those of us who, my parents are still living, thank goodness, never really supported my ventures and things like that. Not because they didn't love me or want me to succeed. They were scared because it was unconventional and they didn't understand it. We tend to realize that those closest to us are the ones who are holding us back the most. Out of love and fear is what it is. And we, of course, don't want to hurt them. I don't want to wrong my father or my mother who have been amazing to me. But there was a period in my life where I didn't speak to my father for a very long time because I needed to cut him out of my life. Because if it's just 5 people in that circle and none of those 5 are lifting you up, how in the world are you going to get better when you're not surrounding yourself by people who are doing better? Now, my father would tell me often, never walk behind an empty cart because nothing will fall from it. I was like, wow, that makes a whole lot of sense. Well, let me expand on that. If it's just those 5 that are around you and that cart isn't very full, you need to start booting out some of those people from that inner circle so you can make space to invite someone who truly does have a full cart, enough where they can share in their wealth and their knowledge. They can mentor you, inspire you, show you a path that you didn't know existed. But you have to first make the space for that. And it's an uncomfortable process because those 5 people who are closest to you, they love you, and you have to kick them out of your life.
But you know what it is too? They take their fears and they basically push their fears onto you, and they're doing it to keep you safe because they love you. But at the same time too, it's kind of, I'll just use an example. My mom was always afraid to swim. You know, I think I was part mermaid. I just love to swim. But I remember every single time I was going to camp or I was out by the pool in the ocean, it was always, don't go in the water. Don't go, you're going to drown. I'm like, I'm not going to drown. You're going to get me so scared that when I go in the water, I am going to drown because you're basically giving me this fear. But It was like, I know she was doing it, you know, she wanted me to be safe and everything else. But at least let me find out for myself if I'm going to drown. I took swimming lessons. I'm going to swim and hopefully survive, which I obviously did. But they do it out of love and support. But that's her fear. Let me develop my own fear. And if it's not for swimming, it'll be for something else. But they do it because they want to protect us. But at the same time, too, it's hurting us because it's keeping us back from finding out what our strengths are or what it is that we want to grow and develop as a person.
And I can tell you from experience that if you have the courage to cut your parents out of your life temporarily, this is not a forever thing. It's a
Right.
temporary thing to give you the time and the space needed. When you come back, you create new boundaries and new sets of rules and regulations of your relationship. I came from a very strict household. My father was and is a very powerful man, and his rules are above God, pretty much. And when I laid out new terms for him, he said no. So we didn't talk for many, many months. But eventually we started communicating again. And then he realized that if he still wants to have a relationship with me, the boundaries and the rules would have to change. And it's important that when we do this, that when we take this cutting and break, we do it out of love. And that we also lay the foundation and path for them so they know how we can reunite on a higher and new set of terms. And I laid those out to my father too before we split apart, but he wasn't ready for it, and that's okay. But months and months had gone by, and eventually we came back together, and little by little, we rebuilt our relationship on a new foundation of newfound respect and admiration for one another. And since then, my father and I have been very tight. Now, it doesn't mean we're still perfect. Many times he still tries to push me in areas which are no fly zones anymore. And my response is I kind of shut down and I say, oh, okay. And then he realizes there's nobody to talk to here anymore. Instead of like, stop it, blah, blah, blah. No, it's out of love, but it's like I put up the wall, and then he realizes, oh, that's right. This is where that boundary was, because like he's a pushing 80 years old. So we do it out of love. We have to have a path, a process to cut out our loved ones and also let them know, hey, I'm doing this out of love. For our friends, you're welcome to join me on this ride, but I'm on this train and I'm not staying in the station for another minute longer. Feel free to hop on board, but it's okay if you stay. Eventually things will wrap around and we can be friends again and spend more time. But for right now, I need to make space in my life because I need to bring other people into my life that can take me to places I am trying to go. And that is part of the process of personal growth and development.
Well, I also look at it as far as, challenging yourself to learn something new. And that also helps you, like you said, for personal growth. Because I've never been, just on my own self, I've never been one to just stay in one area and just be content. I learn from all my experiences. I'm very big with networking, and I want to learn from other people. And it's going to help me in all my endeavors.
So you're talking about challenging yourself. That is, again, examining where you are and where you want to be. If you don't like, I often use the 10-pound analogy. A lot of people want to lose 10 pounds. So if I look at myself today, I don't like my weight. I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to challenge myself to lose 10 pounds. The goal becomes losing the 10 pounds. Now, this is a very important thing that I want you and your audience to understand. Never, ever become fixated on goals because you are setting yourself up for failure. You should identify what your goal is and then reverse engineer the process to get there. Keyword is process. Now, once we know our goal, losing 10 pounds, forget about it. It doesn't exist anymore. The only thing that matters is the process. How am I going to lose 10 pounds? Let's break it down to daily habits. I'm going to wake up 30 minutes earlier. I'm going to journal my food, and I'm going to spend at least 30 minutes in the gym a day, whether it's light or rigorous exercise. That's my process. 3 things. I like to work in the power of 3s. And at the end of each day, when I take inventory of how did my day go? Did I track my food? Yes. Did I wake up early? Yes. Did I train for 30 minutes? Yes. Wow, you know what? I'm a success. I feel pretty good about it. Check, check, check. I go to sleep feeling well. That's hugely important for the subconscious. And when I wake up the next day, you know what? I'm motivated to do it again. But here's where many people go wrong with this, because there's a lot of bad advice out there. If you're fixated on losing 10 pounds and you go work out today and tomorrow and next week and the week after, guess what? You haven't lost 10 pounds yet. Maybe you lost 2 or 3. You're fluctuating. What do you think happens to your motivation and drive and desire?
goes right down, and that's it, and you're done with it because you're like, it's not working.
It's
That's
not
everybody's.
working.
Yeah, it's not working.
Right, it's not working because you're thinking about a goal. But if it's just the process you're after, you just have one day of challenge to do 3 simple things. And it's not that difficult to do that. And at the end of the day, when you check off those 3 boxes, you're going to feel accomplished. And nothing will motivate you like being accomplished. The sense of accomplishment creates momentum. And momentum drives you to be motivated to do it again and again. And that's all you have to think about. And before you know it, a couple of weeks are going to go by because you're doing the process. And then you step on the scale and you've lost 10 pounds. And you're like, okay, well, that was like, didn't even think about it. That's great. And you know what? And then you're like, I don't even care. I like the process. Why don't I shoot for another 5? Maybe I increase my workout to 45. Tweak the process a little bit. Start having fun with it. These are, minimize to small bite sizes of tasks, of challenges. You said challenge yourself. Documenting, doing a food journal, it's not that difficult. It's a little tedious and it's annoying at times, but it's not difficult. It's a very manageable challenge. Waking up a little bit early is a manageable challenge. Working out 30 minutes, it's a manageable challenge. But if you do that progressively, day in, day out, and you can take a few days off, that's okay. I talked earlier about the compounding effect. Right. You will be shocked when the compounding starts kicking in, how results start going exponential, just like that. And then you're going to realize, well, I think I just figured out the secret sauce. Yeah, I just need to focus on the process, keep it small, bite-sized, challenge myself. When I get comfortable and I hit that goal, then let me start tweaking, make the challenge a little bit more challenging, because we adjust, because it becomes easy. It becomes routine. It becomes a
boring. Okay. Right. But also, you know what it is too? The dedication. Okay. You need to be dedicated to the process so that you're getting up and you're doing those 3 things every day.
That is discipline. Right? Mm-hmm. That discipline is hugely important. And I think that's the hardest thing, is discipline, because I would say 70% of the time you're not going to want to do it. You're going to be tired. You're going to be dealing with other stressors and 100 other things. Discipline overrides all of it. Discipline says that I don't care if I feel crappy. I'm still going to do it. I don't care if I just got in a fight with so-and-so, or I have this big project, or what, doesn't matter. I have discipline. And at the end of the day, that's another box to check off. Was I disciplined today? Yes, I was, especially in the face of all this thing I'm going through. I was able to keep it together. That sense of accomplishment, which goes totally unnoticed, it's just you and yourself, is so rewarding and powerful that it fuels you. Discipline, it truly is the secret sauce. You must be disciplined because processes require discipline, because you have to be consistent. You cannot be consistent without being disciplined.
Well, then it takes us full circle. It takes us full circle back to looking at the person in the mirror and then starting to like the person in the mirror.
Right. You do. At the end of the day, and I do that all the time. I'm into fitness, and I'll look at myself in the mirror all the time. And at the end of the day, I was like, you still, you're doing all right. You're doing okay. I'm not looking for amazing results. I'm looking for 1% improvements. I'm looking for consistency, something to remind me that, you know what, I am disciplined. Maybe I don't have huge gains, but I'm still on the path. And that, that persistence will eliminate 98% of the competition over time, because most people will not be persistent, because all of this static noise that you talked about is just so easy to numb out. It's so easy to just get lax about things and coast, because we have been provided an environment to keep us lame. So we don't rock the boat, because those up on pulling the strings don't want us to do that. They don't want us to be free like that. But when we find our path, it truly is liberating.
It comes back to a couple of things that you mentioned, is that, it's okay to have those bad days and be upset or disappointed with yourself in the mirror. And then when you have the good days that you're checking off the boxes, it's okay to pat yourself on the back in the mirror and say, you know something? You did good today. I'm proud of you.
Very important to pat ourselves on the back. That's I did a video about that to remind people, guys, you need to pat yourself on the back every now and then. We don't do that enough.
No,
We've
we
been
don't.
conditioned to hate on ourselves. Marketing, capitalism exists by making people feel less than, because that's the only way you get them to become consumers. If we were taught that you are enough, we would not have an economy the way we do. Things wouldn't sell. They can only sell you by convincing you that you are not enough. And
you
America
need the
is
product.
number one.
And
Sorry?
you need that product, and you need that car, those sneakers to be better, as opposed to work on yourself. Okay, I don't need the Subaru, the Lexus, or whatever cars are going on. I don't need the $600 sneakers or the $40,000 watch to be better. And this is what it is. We get so materialistic.
Yeah.
That is what is going to make us feel better. And this is why people always say, well, why is it if he or she has so much money, they're so successful? Why are they so miserable? Why did he commit suicide? Why is he on drugs? Because, you know something, no matter what that person is buying, it's not making him or herself like who they are in the mirror, because it's just the thing. They're still not working on their inner person.
There's a hole in here, and it's like a whirlpool. And it just gets sucked into some place, some dimension that they refuse to go. And they just keep trying to fill things in that void. And like a black hole, it goes away. And that amazing new car might keep them excited for a couple of weeks. Right. And then they just, you get bored. And it's like,
it's just like, okay, now what?
There's never enough. You have to learn how to plug that hole. And does not come from the outside. And again, loving the person in the mirror is part of that process, because when you learn to love yourself in the mirror, you've put a patch there, and probably a permanent patch, that I'm no longer going to let outside things decide my happiness, my sense of contentment, my sense of feeling adequate. No. This is all from me, from the inside. And when you figure that out and achieve that, all of a sudden these material things and statuses just start to diminish and go away, and they become less meaningful. And it's a liberating process.
But it's the same thing. When you have these men and women who are constantly in and out of relationships all the time. Mm-hmm. And it could be, it's like, you say to your guy friend, it's like, wow, what was wrong with the one you went out with last month? She was tall, skinny, beautiful. She was like, it's like, she's this, she's that. But they're constantly looking for something, whether it's like the next big thing, the next pretty girl, the next good looking guy. And it doesn't have to be materialistic. It can actually it affects relationships too, because if you're still not happy with yourself, you can't expect somebody else to fill that void for you.
That's another big one. Other people filling that void for you. Mm-hmm. Most of my life, and I was married 12 years and I've been divorced for 10 now. I remember most of my dating life when I was in those handful of relationships. I remember thinking and saying to my partner at the time that, you complete me, you balance me. That is a fundamental error. Stop it. Don't ever let anybody complete you or fulfill you or balance you. You must be able to do and be all of those things solo. And then you introduce people into your life and you share each other and experiences and time. But that thinking you need someone to complete you or balance you just means that you are an incomplete and unbalanced person. That's all that means. And you bring that person and all of a sudden you're happy and things are great. And then a year or two goes by and then they break up with you and you are wrecked because the soul of your life was pulled out of you. That's because you never fulfilled your own. You are borrowing someone else's life force to compensate for what was missing in your own life. That is a recipe for disaster. don't do that.
But you hear it all the time when you hear somebody go like, "Oh, I found my other half." So it makes it sound like you're walking around half a person. And I got to find this other person who's going to like magneto attach themselves to me. And like, now I'm whole. But I remember I'm 2 divorced. It's going to be actually, I think 6 years next month. So, in the relationships that I've had over the last number of years, I've met some really nice people, and I've met some people who had so much baggage that they were like a carousel of baggage from the airport. And I realized, something, I'm like, I got my own things to deal with, and it's not like yours, and I don't want to deal with all of yours, but I'm not looking for someone to complete me. I'm not looking for my other half. Right. I would like to meet somebody who I have an expression because of my business background. What do you bring to the table? I mean, I know what I bring to the table. What do you bring to the table? So this way we can do something together. Yeah. Not that I'm walking around, like with one arm, and I need your arm to attach, so I have another arm.
Yeah. I think these rom-coms and Disney movies have really messed with people's perception of what truly, how relationships work, mm-hmm. and what the real dynamics are. I just did a newsletter talking a little bit about how online dating has really exposed the true biology between men and women and how we think and function between one another. And it's totally corrupted us. Yeah, look, it's great to have a wife. I mean, I never thought I'd be divorced. I loved my wife. I loved being married. I loved
being married too. Yeah,
I loved it. It was. I will never knock that. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for me. I failed as a man in many areas, which took me years to realize, and I understand that today. I didn't understand how relationships really worked. Nobody taught that to me. Certainly in movies, it's all fake. That's not how things really work. I didn't know, but you really do need to be whole, and that certainly was a big part of my divorce because I was not a whole person, and I was leaning on her to fulfill me, and she was leaning on me to fulfill her. But then we start getting older, and then we start having children, and then I realized that I, as a man, and we're talking men and women, right? We have our roles and our place in biology and society and culture. Today, it's a little bit gray, and that's a whole other podcast which we could dedicate to. But
you're coming back to that one.
I understood that as a man, there are certain things I need to be in order to make sure my wife is attracted to me. And I didn't know these things until it was too late. And so she lost desire, which was natural. Because our biology eventually catches up with us. This brain wiring eventually catches up with us. And then we realize, fundamental error, she's not this or I'm not that. And then the desire and the love, all that begins to dissolve. And then, marriages fall apart. And if the lucky ones figure out that what went wrong and where they messed up and how to self-correct. And that took me many years to figure that out. It was probably a good 7 years after my divorce that I finally realized what I did wrong and started fixing myself so I could be that potentially better mate down the line.
But, communication is also very key in any relationship. And when we're younger and we look at our parents and grandparents who seemed that they were married forever, because again, it was different times and different cultures. No one ever teaches us as we're growing up about what are we supposed to do in a relationship with our husband or wife. It just makes it sound like, you meet the person, you love them. And if you're not that crazy about them, you're going to learn to love them, and you get married and you have a family and you stay together for the family, but no one really tells you how to figure things out. What happens if you start falling out of love, if you can't communicate and you're staying together, say, just for the children? It's not making anybody happy. It's who is it making happy? Your parents or grandparents, because they don't want to see you divorced?
I think the biggest difference between our grandparents' generation and even our parents' generation and even my ish generation, I'm 48, it's social media. Social media gave too much options for people. Our grandparents and our parents were really only accessible to those within their small communities.
Mhm.
That was it. So the pool was way, way smaller. Today, a young, attractive woman on Instagram will get the attention of the top 1% men all over the world because social media is global. Uh, our grandparents didn't have that. They just knew who they knew in their town, and people kind of got together and they made it work because they didn't really have a lot of options.
Right.
Today, we have infinite options. In the dating world, women have access to almost any man. They don't want every man, but they have access to every man, and most every man would want almost all the women. So just imagine what that does to the psyche. I mean, you have infinite choices. When you have infinite choices, you can't choose anything. And you're constantly thinking about the next best thing. And if
Yes.
something goes a little sideways, you already know there's 10 other guys waiting in your DMs to pick up where you dropped that ball. It's just that easy. And you know, we've become this on-demand society where we can have everything now, if not yesterday. You can order everything on Amazon and have it 24 hours later. If not, stream it, download it, and access it right now. We have lost the concept of patience. The generations of now don't even know what patience is because
No.
they've never needed to have it.
It's immediate gratification.
Yeah, and that's a terrible thing. That's a terrible thing because true gratification comes from the labor of hard work and trial and tribulations. And when you finally land that success, it is truly gratifying because it's the yin and the yang. You know, without the suffering, you can't redeem and feel the joy of the success. But when everything is presented to you and becomes very accessible, and certainly some people have more access to other things than others, those people are completely lost because they don't have to work for anything because it's all given to them. And if one little thing goes wrong, they've got a slew of other people who will give it to them again. And this can go on for decades and decades until people eventually hit the wall much, much later in life. But at that point, you know, it's probably a lost cause and the damage has been done. And that's a shame. And that's, I think, you know, I was sharing when we kind of talked earlier the other day that I've been spending quite a bit of time exploring the dynamics of men and women and social media and the dynamics today and these wild statistics that are now coming out. How, and maybe you've heard, something like a third of young men have had no intimacy in over a year. 15% of young men have no best friends. Other just shocking statistics to show how unsocial we've become because of the social media, which has basically brought the top percenters of the men and the women to the very top, and they're all together all the time because they're accessible to each other, and everybody else has become obsolete. Because why should I mess around with all of these when I've got these great catches lined up all day long for me? Because I'm a top 1% guy. I've got a lot of options. And the things and the stories that I hear, it's very sad. It's very sad. Look, I'm pushing 50, so I'm kind of over that. And I checked off the 2 big boxes. I've been married. I have children. But these young men that are in their 20s, and that are just coming out of high school or college, and they're entering a very shaky economy market and overpriced colleges and blah, 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 underappreciated degrees or undervalued degrees. I feel bad for them. And you know what the most dangerous thing is? The lonely man, the loner man. And we are producing them in the millions. And these are the people that are going out and doing crazy things like shooting up public places. These are all loners men who don't have access to relationships and they feel less than. And then they go on these tirades so they can feel that they have something, that they're worthy of something, even if it's something horrific as the things that they do. But to
Well,
them,
they
that's
want to be known, right? You know, I discuss this with friends of mine, is because they're unknown right now and they're anonymous. And how better to be known, even for something negative, because any attention is better than no attention. So they'll go out, like you said, the lone wolf, the one who's going to shoot up a movie theater, a church, a synagogue, a gay club, So
Right.
now everyone knows him. They know my name, and he goes down in flames. But in his mind, for that short period of time, he was somebody.
He was
And
somebody big.
Yeah, and it's very, very sad. And then then you always have the family members, the friends, and the neighbors saying, like, I thought something was off with him. They wanted to say something. All these people who come out afterwards with, like, he was a loner. He used to play games all the time. He didn't talk to anyone. Why didn't you look to be his friend then?
Just imagine if our education system early on, elementary school, started teaching our young boys and girls about personal growth and development, about learning to love themselves, about appreciating what life is about. None of these things are taught. They're just not. And this is a skill set that even many adults fail to have because it's not taught. Those of us who, hit our bottoms and kind of figured out, oh shit, I need to do something about this. We do. But I figured it out I started at 40 and now I'm 48. And really only the last 3 years did I say that I've been loving myself. And I finally reached that mountaintop where I was like, wow, okay, I made it. I love myself. I'm happy. I feel content. I feel balanced. I was 47 years old. Oh, and that's more than half of my life by the time I figured that out. I so wished that I had a mentor when I was in high school. And that's the reason that I got into public speaking, because I wanted to speak at high schools. Because for years and years, I hated myself and wished I can go back in time to when I was a teenager and just slap myself across the face a few times and just have a conversation like, look, man, you need to do this, this, and that, because otherwise your life is just not going to work out the way you think it will. But I never had that. My high school never had that. And I wanted to do the next best thing when I finally figured these things out, is to imbue this knowledge on to the youth. And that's how I started doing my public speaking, was going after the high school market, which was very challenging because the gatekeepers, the admins, that was a whole different animal. And that didn't work out very well. So I then realized that actually people my age need this advice just as much as the youth, if not more. And then I shifted to an older audience and continued to deliver this message. But this really it's fundamental. It needs to be taught, and it isn't. And I think now when we look around society, especially lately with what's going on with this war overseas and seeing these protests and seeing how ignorant people are of just reality and history. So ignorant, and they're so committed to their ignorance. That's what drives me mad. They're so dedicated. And that is the epitome of horrific indoctrination that comes from a very evil place. And that I've been very saddened lately because of what's been going on. Not the war, but seeing how people across the world are reacting to the war.
And how ACE is so easily manipulated with misinformation that they don't even want to go out on their own to find out, okay, well, is this really factual, what I'm being told? They're just taking and swallowing and going out and just wanting to become violent. Yeah. It's one thing to do peaceful protests, but this is not. When you're trapping other students in a school, right, in a library, and you're really trying to hurt people, you're running out onto a tarmac, trying to pull people off an airplane in Russia because of who you think is on there. Right. These are crowds. These are just crowds. And, it's that mob mentality. And that's when it gets very dangerous. because you plant that seed, you have everybody believing it, and that's all you need. They don't want to know from anything else.
When you don't create intellectual self-thinkers, then you create people who subscribe to the mob mentality. That's, in a nutshell, it's what it is. And there's a long history of why that is. In fact, I watched a podcast just the other day, and the gentleman was talking about how the education system started. Now, I'm very big on the education system, and by big, I mean I despise it because I think it's a fraud. I had worked on this development project of mine called School Me, Fool Me, because it truly is a fraud and a scam. But he took it way back to, I think it was the 1700s, in the time of Prussia and the military there. And he said at the time, there was a war going on, the Napoleonic War, something like that. And the Prussians were not following orders. And they lost this battle or war, something like that. And the leaders in charge realized this fundamental error. I keep coming back to that fundamental error. And they said, how do we get our soldiers to follow orders and not think on their own? And that's how the education program in Eastern Europe back then was developed. And they started raising children. They created an education program. They decided what to teach, how to teach, what kind of history to teach. They created the idea of authority figure, the teacher, and students who must obey. You want to ask a question? Raise your hand. You want to go use the restroom? Ask for permission. Everything permission, permission, permission. Misbehave, you get a bad grade. They invented the idea of grades. And they realized in a very short amount of time that they raised a generation of robots who will follow orders and not question authority. And then fast forward to the 1800s or so, when America was going through the big boom, and the Rockefellers and Henry Ford and all of those guys who were running massive industries that had tens of thousands of laborers, they wanted the same thing because they realized we need workers, we need robots.
That was our the Industrial Revolution.
Correct. So they go over to Europe to learn the systems from those who created it, and they brought it to America. And who do you think funded all these universities and everything? The Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Fords, all of these huge successful people of the 1800s, early 1900s. They created these institutions that are now indoctrinating people. So all of this was built to not educate people, but to give them just enough information so they will comply and follow orders and not question authority. That's how the education system came to be. It's shocking. And now we can look around and we can see the outcome. People that have no idea how to think on their own, they will be complicit in doing horrific things and be righteous in their mindset, thinking like they are doing it correctly because they've been programmed really from kindergarten, from such an early age. And it's a sad, sad state of affair that we are now dealing with. And I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
It's frightening to think so, but I agree with you. Before we sign off, I wanted you to tell our audience a couple things about you. Number one, please tell everybody about your book and where they can get it.
Yeah, let's switch gears, right? Let's talk about something a little bit more positive here. My book is titled Living Totality, a Mindset Upgrade for Living a Life of Totality. It is available on ebook through Amazon and through other of the ebook type platforms. But if you want a hard copy version, I would say just go to my website, acethespeaker.com, and there's a link right there, which will go to the order form, and it's about $19 shipping included. And I'll personally inscribe it, a message just for you, and I'll send you a copy. It's something I'm very proud of because it was taking my 7-year journey, packaging it in a easy to read guide with a lot of tools and things you can exercises do to really create a blueprint for the life that you want to build for yourself. Again, the outcome, the goal, and then the processes to get there. And this book, this tool, this guide can really help you achieve that better version of yourself.
Well, I want to thank you so much because I could sit here for hours talking to you because our interests are all over the place. But I will tell you this, I want you back. We have
Thank you,
so much
Pamela.
more to talk about. I really do. I would like you back.
Agreed.
And,
Thank you so much. I do want to expand our conversations in different ways. We have a similar background, and we could definitely have a lot of interesting talks. So thank you again so much for having me on this evening. I truly hope that your audience got some value from our conversation. One thing I've learned is that we should share the light. When we find it, we should share it. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you. It wasn't about me anymore. I've already ticked off that box and I checked it off. At this point, I feel I'm just kind of doing God's work, and I want to continue to enlighten others, to give them that spark of inspiration so they can say, oh, you know what? I think I can do this. And now I know where to start. And that's all it takes, because that one little spark can turn into a flame of glory and light up your whole world. So thank you again, Pamela, and thank you, audience, for taking the time to listen to us tonight.
And after speaking with you tonight, I will tell the audience, do not be afraid of change. Okay? Because
Embrace it. Embrace
it. And you know something? Things happen for a reason.
Yes,
and it brought you and I together tonight.
Yes, it did. It took some time, but we finally did it.
We finally got it. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to Anthony.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ace. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye.
This broadcast is produced by Griffo Productions.